Hi, I'm Lynn Wise, and with me today is Rebecca Keller. Today we're going to be talking about the UN Climate Change Summit coming up at the end of the month in Paris. So Rebecca, what can we expect to come out of this summit?
The climate change talks in Paris have been long planned. There have been several talks in preparation moving forward, and we're looking at coming out of it with an actual agreement on climate change policy and emission reductions goals for the majority of the world. However, this resolution, while it will be binding, probably won't have a lot of teeth in terms of enforcement or consequences.
So it seems like enforcement is always the issue in these agreements. What kind of mechanisms are they putting in place to ensure some kind of enforcement, even if it will be hard to actually implement?
That still remains to be seen. That might be part of the language that's addressed in Paris, but in all likelihood, probably not a lot. France and China recently announced over the last couple of days that they're looking at checkpoints throughout the process to see if the goals are being met or if they're not. But there still isn't a lot of talk of what the consequences would be if the goals aren't met. And that's, if there aren't any consequences, it's really hard to enforce on an international level, there's really no initiative beyond economics and social pressures to make the changes in technology. And in the end, it will be economic and social pressures that drive the technology change forward, and not this agreement coming out of Paris.
And so we know that oil prices have declined recently. How is that changing the conversation about climate change and about things that we can do to combat it?
So I don't know that that's come in as much as you might think. The typical argument in the economics is that the lower the oil prices, the less incentive there is to search for alternative technologies to compete with oil. But what we're seeing is a constant reduction in renewable technologies and green technologies. And as those keep coming down in costs, we'll see greater and greater incorporation simply on an economic basis. So the technology change and technology transition is happening regardless of what comes out of Paris.
And so we've talked a lot about the things that have impeded these kinds of agreements in the past has been kind of the inequality between countries and the rates of industrialization. Can you talk a little bit about how that plays into these talks?
So that's going to be the biggest hurdle in Paris to getting anything on paper. There was a lot of adjustments made to the draft text in Bonn, Germany, the last time the group met. And what the language that was added is that the developed world, the world that's already gone through the Industrial Revolution, would have a responsibility to the developing world in order to essentially pay for these adaptations, because the developing world, economics and economic development are still the highest priority. Continuing to grow still trumps any kind of global agreement on climate change policy. And so if coal is the cheapest fuel to support your economy, you're going to stick with coal. But if the developed world is willing to pay for these adjustments, the developing world will be more willing to participate and help out.
And how willing has these industrialized nations been to help?
We're seeing some growth. There is something called the Green Climate Fund, which it has a goal of $100 billion per year to go towards this effort. Pledges have not reached that amount by any means, but that is the system that is being set up. However, if you look at all of the individual countries' plans going into Paris for how they want to adapt for climate change, that $100 billion probably isn't going to be enough to fulfill all the requests coming out of the developing world for help in this transition.
Well, we'll be watching the summit closely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
For more on climate change and the environment, please visit stratfor.com.